It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody. Starring the irrepressible Andrew Bernstein and the redoubtable Robert Begley. I am Andrew Bernstein, and you are indubitably Robert Begley. How you doing this afternoon, Robert?
I'm doing great, Andy. Happy to be here talking about the man who created more happiness, possibly than anybody before or since.
Well, that's quite a statement, but I mean, that's quite a credential. But for Walt Disney, I think that's probably appropriate.
Let's look at the
Eh,
facts, okay, throughout the
Yeah,
course of this session.
absolutely. Be objective about this. Let's look at the facts. We know that
Mhm.
Disney's dates were 1901 to 1966. So unfortunately,
Yes.
he didn't have a long life by the standards of the 20th century. Yeah, he was a heavy smoker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah, that definitely affected his longevity.
Did he die of lung cancer? I don't I
Unfortunately.
don't I don't remember. Was it
Yes.
lung cancer? Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah. If you're a heavy
hmm
smoker, that has that effect. One early 20th century, nobody knew when he was growing up the harmful effects of heavy cigarette smoking. Today you'd just be a fool if you're smoking 2 packs a day or whatever. But but back then
Yeah.
nobody knew. Anyhow, so what do we know about Disney's early life? Do we know a lot about his
Well, he was the
his
fourth.
childhood?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was the fourth of four children, and his father, unfortunately, kind of hit him and his older brother Roy periodically, and Walt withdrew into drawing. That was kind of his way of releasing and going into his own world. Which clearly he turned a lemon into lemonade, but he learned the value of hard work growing up in the Midwest. They were traditional values. Chicago area is where he grew up and went to a school, high school for art. And then when he was underage, 1919, he lied about his age in order to go to the tail end of World War One, where he worked in France, actually doing some drawings. That was one of his things. So a patriot through and through. And again, old fashioned values were always important to Disney.
Right, right. Disney. I can remember. I'm old enough to remember Walt Disney's TV show in the
Yeah.
19,
hmm
1960s. What was the name of Walt Disney's Disneyland? That was the name of the
Walt
TV
Disney
show?
Presents was the
Walt
first
Disney.
one. He had a couple of them, but yeah, when Disneyland was opening, he did a couple of premieres showing like the progress of it. Yeah, that was in the 50s, and then also in preparation to Disney World, he had some television programs yeah,
Okay.
to that
What
effect
what
as
ye-
well.
what year
Mhm.
what year did Disney World open? In the one in Orlando? What year was that? Was that I can't.
Uh,
I know Disney. I know Disneyland was 1950 something, but Disney World came later.
55, yeah, 55 was Disneyland in
In
Anaheim. So
Anaheim,
he
Anaheim, right?
transformed this orange grove into, the happiest place on earth. And
Right,
then Disney
right.
World in Orlando, he transformed the swamp with a billion alligators into another happiest place uh,
Yeah.
in the
As
world.
far as I'm
And
concerned, I'm
it
sorry.
was,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, it was the late 60s. He didn't
Like,
live to
yeah,
see it. And it was gradual because they were always adding on. Disney as a visionary was no job was ever completed. It was always in
right,
progress, looking for more and more. hmm
right. As far as the alligators go, I hope they killed them all. Rather than took some environmentalist animal rights, attitude. Well, let's save the alligators. I mean, alligators. I mean, my God. I mean, they're an argument that shows there's no God. I mean,
I'll tell you,
but
Andy. So personally, yesterday was 1 year anniversary that I moved from New York City right here to Orlando. Still haven't seen an alligator the whole time I've been
good,
here. But
good. I'm
what I
glad to hear
told
it.
my family was I want to live in a place that looks to the future. And basically that was the vision of one man. And that one man is Walt Disney. And that's one reason I'm happy to celebrate his heroism because just an innovator through and through. So if we just continue along
Yeah, I
his
just want
timeline,
just
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I just want to say one thing because you're absolutely right about what a patriot Walt Disney was. Because I can remember as a kid watching the Walt Disney show. I think it was on Sunday. It was on Sunday nights, if I remember correctly. But
Mhm.
they did a lot of live action shows on on Disney's TV show, and I can remember a lot of stuff about the Revolutionary War. About Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, who was fighting for
Mhm.
freedom against the British, and how it really upheld the patriotism of the American Revolution. I can remember that from a very very young age. It resonated with me because I always loved American ideals, and so that Disney presented these
Perfect.
Revolutionary War characters as great heroes. Yeah, it was perfect for me. I loved it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now he
And
let me ask you one question before we go on. He created Mickey Mouse early in his career with a collaborate, has some odd name. There you go. From the Mickey Mouse Club.
yeah, yeah, Charles Mintz. So he worked. So he comes back from the war, and he works in Kansas City for a couple of years, learning his craft, art and animation. And then he moves to Los Angeles because he knows that's where the film capital of the world is. And Charles Mintz is someone that he collaborates with and contracts a Disney studio, and he creates Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. That's the first animated
Right.
character, and Mintz effectively steals that. So Disney, who faced actually before then, he had two businesses that went bankrupt. So what do heroes do, Andy? They have adversity, they overcome. He's abused as a kid, turns to drawing. He
Well, we always quote
helps.
Shackleton. We always quote Shackleton on this show,
Yeah,
right? Obstacles are just things to be overcome. And
exactly, and
you're
that's
right.
what
Disney
heroes do.
certainly
That's
did.
why we admire them. Hmm.
Right.
So then, Mintz basically steals that character. And what does Disney do? Does he want to get into a legal battle and spend the next 10 years in and out of courts? No, he's like, guess what? He can't create. He, he could steal, but he can't create. I'm the creator. So then, yeah, I go and do Mickey Mouse, originally called Steamboat Willie. And the innovative aspect here was
There he is.
that
There
thank
he
you.
is.
The innovative aspect was that now sound. This is the first time sound was synchronized with animation, and the audiences were just awed. They were completely awed. So probably innovation number one in Disney's long career of innovations. That was it. Steamboat Willie, which is Mickey Mouse, who is the average man, the average benevolent man. Disney kind of personally aligned himself with Mickey Mouse. I got to admit, the character never really appealed to me personally, but I get the broad universal appeal of
Yeah,
Mickey Mouse.
it's
But
the
that's what,
happiness. The happiness factor, the
yes,
goodwill. Life is
yes.
good. We're going to have fun and everything. By the way, I was reading about Walt Disney that early in his career, people told him Mickey Mouse is not commercially viable. Women are going to see a mouse running across the screen, and they're going to scream and get up and run out. Well, well, in real life, I know a number of women who are not too fond of mice in real life, but they have.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Disney's critics underestimated the inner strength of most women to be able to tolerate a mouse on the silver screen, and so Mickey Mouse eventually became a big hit, didn't
Yeah, and guess who was Mickey's partner? Minnie. All right, so you get a
he?
female mouse there too, and now all of a sudden it's
Well,
more benevolent, and there's love and there's romance. But you brought up a good point, Andy. His whole life, Disney was told you can't do this. Okay, that was the other thing. Instead of encouraging him, wow, you're so creative. Why don't you do more and more of these kinds of things? No, his whole life he was told, no, that's not going to work. And what did he do? He just proceeded to go about his business and prove how it would work. So yeah, Mickey Mouse was that's what put him on the map. And he just continued that ascent. So that's around 1926, 27. Then he goes into what he calls silly symphonies. Then another innovation, he and his brother. So we have to talk about Roy, his older brother, because Walt was the creative genius. and not necessarily the businessman, because you could have all these ideas, but how are they going to be funded? So
Right.
Roy was the business mind, and they formed Disney and the Disney Studios, and they licensed Mickey Mouse. So this little pen that my dearest bought from me, the Mickey Mouse, this wasn't done before Mickey Mouse. The merchandising was not something that creative people really thought of. So here's now the capitalistic element, where how do we leverage this thing that people all over the globe end up liking, and how do we legitimately profit from it?
We got to have merch, right? We got to sell the merch. That's good, especially for the kids. I mean, the kids are
Of
delighted
course,
by
that's right.
by this.
So the next thing was
Yeah.
the Mickey Mouse Club. And within 6 months, there's like 1 million members. And again, you as a kid saw the appeal of this. What did he do? He blended two values to you: the 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 heroism of the American Revolution, the Revolutionary era heroes. So you have that patriotic thing, and you're seeing it in a different medium, which is television. All right, which Disney mastered. We'll talk later on when we get into the era of television, where everyone who was successful with the big screen thought the little screen was the enemy because it was going to put them all out of work, and Disney embraced that. So we have synchronizing music as one innovation, synchronizing sound with animation. Then we have merchandising, and then he moves on to the first feature film, which
But
was
hold on
Snow
a
White and
second.
the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah,
Yeah, let me jump in for a second. Also, we don't want to underestimate choosing a mouse as your hero or main character, because rodents. I mean, a lot of people are not fond of rodents. Although it's interesting in these cartoons like Tom and Jerry or remember Mighty Mouse? The cats
I
are
loved
often the
Mighty
bad
Mouse,
guy.
the opera singer. Here I come to save the day. I
Yeah,
actually
right,
loved Mighty
right.
Mouse more than Mickey Mouse, frankly.
Well, Mighty Mouse had powers, but in these
That's right.
cartoons, I was always puzzled by that because in real life, people domesticate cats to kill the mice, and yet in the cartoons, the cats are the bad guys because they're chasing the mice. They want to kill the mice, and the mice are like innocent and heroic, whether it's Mighty Mouse or Tom and Jerry. So that's just kind of puzzling. As a person who always loved always loved cats and a lot of dogs, friendly dogs, not rodents. But that's just an aside. Walt Disney, that might have been, we already discussed. People were skeptical about a mouse being commercially viable, but he stuck with it. And I'll tell you how, just as one instance of how commercially viable Mickey Mouse was, less than 20 years ago, I was in Hong Kong, and with my ex-wife, and so we were getting on a plane going to Beijing, and this young Chinese woman at the counter, maybe she's 25 or something. In Hong Kong, the animated character that's very popular is Hello Kitty. Speaking of cats, a
That's
Japanese,
right.
a
That's
Japanese
right. Yeah.
character. Yeah, and a lot of people in Hong Kong had their Hello Kitty, dolls and everything. And this particular woman had Mickey Mouse. And she had a Mickey, Mickey stuffed Mickey Mouse. And I said, "No Hello Kitty" to her, and she smiled. She said, "I prefer Mickey Mouse." And so this is like 2002. Was this 80?
Yeah.
Some roughly 80 years after
Mhm.
Disney created Mickey Mouse. He's still that's just one example, obviously, but I think still a worldwide phenomenon. Disney's characters.
Absolutely. The legacy of Mickey Mouse is just, yeah,
Yes.
it's
And who'd have thunk you?
unheard of.
Who'd have thunk, yeah, who'd have
No.
thunk that a mouse, a rodent would be, would become this big cultural icon? Are you old enough to remember the Mickey Mouse Club, or was that before your time?
They kept rebooting it. So when I was a kid, it was on, and again, that was, yeah, I remember
Yeah, I
Mickey
was
Mouse.
gonna
We
say.
used to
I was
actually
gonna say.
change it. We used to change it to Moose. Like at the end, we would change the.
Right.
A few
I
of my
can.
older siblings would sing.
Yeah, I can. I'm old enough to remember the original, and as a kid, I watched it, and how did the song start? who's the leader of the club that's
Uh,
made for you and me? MICKEY. MOUSE.
MICKEY.
And here we are as
Wow,
adults
this is a
singing the
blast from the past.
from
Yeah,
the Mickey Mouse
yeah,
from the Mickey Mouse Club, and it was so hokey. And yet, when you're 5 years old, it's charming, and it's fun,
right.
and it's directed
And at
towards
the end,
kids.
they would say, "Now it's time to say goodbye." Right, the same
Yeah,
melody, but changing
right,
when the show is over, they're gearing you up for the end.
right.
So now
Right.
he's starting. He's branching out. He wants to make full length animated films,
Wait,
which is
I
Snow
keep
White.
interrupting you. By the way,
Yeah.
wait, hold on a second. One last
Mhm.
thing, because at the end, I just remembered at the end when they're saying farewell. MICKEY, and the guy says, "Why? Because we like you."
Because
We like you. Yeah, it was so good natured. That was when it was just
yeah,
it was just very. It's ridiculous. You look at it as adults, but you would all these human beings wearing mouse ears and everything. But for children, it was just very warm hearted, and it was kindly, and it was just and it's just it projected a world of fun and happiness, and your life doesn't have to be a dreary struggle. Your life can be fun. That was the whole ethos of Disney,
yes.
of the Mickey Mouse Club, and of Disney more broadly. That's why he's so beloved, I think.
That's right, Andy. Very good point. Underlying everything you just said is that fact. All right. This is not a vicious, cynical, hour-long program telling you life is hopeless. It's giving you the aspiration for to do things in life, and in this benevolent kind of universe that Disney had set up.
Did you ever see
So
more recently? Wait, did you ever see
yeah.
more recently? Courage the Cowardly Dog. Did you ever see episodes of that? I used to watch it with Penny my daughter when she was a little girl,
It's a
and I
Disney.
like.
It's
No, 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 no. It's dark, but this is
Oh,
and
okay.
I got it. I have to say, I kind of enjoyed it. But Courage the Cowardly Dog, and they starts off. They live on the edge of nowhere, and spooky things happen on the edge of nowhere. And there's a lot of scary stuff happens, which is a very different, mindset, very different feel than the Disney shows for children.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a difference in the
And
in the
there's a
culture
place
we
for that,
become.
Andy. There's definitely, I would say there's a place for that because you don't want to be hidden from the darkness that people will experience in life. But for me in general, just the appeal, the appeal of the positive is it's just more appealing. And
Yeah.
and Disney knew that for people, every color, every culture. The other thing was, okay, his genius was he thought universally. He did it in America, which was we tie it into freedom. He was free to do this in America, but it branched out to it was a global phenomenon because, and as you experienced in Hong Kong, yeah, it's you would think Hello Kitty, it's an Asian creation, and that would be the more broad appeal, but no. uh, Disney knew that this was a universal appeal, and so it succeeded with Mickey Mouse and moves on to Snow White. And just want to talk about one of the innovations with Snow White was that he had the multi-plane cameras that could simultaneously shoot different levels of with background. And this was another innovation, and that's why when people saw it in the theater, they were just amazed, and like nothing they'd ever experienced. Snow White,
Yeah, one
fairy
after
tale
another.
story.
Yeah, one after another, the Disney Studios churned out these classic animated films:
Yeah.
Pinocchio, Dumbo, Bambi, Fantasia,
Yes.
Cinderella. It's one after another,
Yeah.
and it's just extraordinary. The
Yeah.
Disney Studios won, what was it, 22 Academy Awards, and were
So
nominated
many. Yeah.
59 times. 59 Academy
Yeah.
Award nominations, and won 22. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's just an
Yeah.
extraordinary run. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
for him, for
Yeah. So
his
let me
production
pause,
company.
Andy, on
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Fantasia,
yeah.
because
Yeah, go ahead.
Fantasia, my father and I watched that, actually the whole Begley family, but particularly my father and I watched that in the theater, Ziegfeld Theater in New York City. They would always
Oh,
just
on
bring it
50, on
back.
55th, on fifth was it
50,
55th and
yeah,
sixth,
that's
54th
right.
and
That's
sixth.
right.
Okay.
A
They had no
lone theater
balcony. They had the balcony, right?
with
That was
yeah,
like a real
balcony with
old fashioned
incredible
movie
sound.
theater. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And whenever they would re-release it, we would go. The two of us would go together because we loved the idea of this symphonic music. He got Leopold Stokowski, Philadelphia Orchestra. So another innovation was now having orchestrated music with different, trying to interpret what music, particularly classical music, and some of Fantasia. There's like the creation of the earth. I think to the Rite of Spring, to Igor Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. I always remember in the Nutcracker, the Waltz of the Flowers, just real beautiful with the hippopotamuses dancing on point shoes, and Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. So this beautiful. I remember as a kid, like being introduced to classical music through Fantasia, through the animation of Disney, and just the picturesque. Quality, again, another innovation of Disney, and personally my favorite, my of all the Disney movies, personally my favorite. I just bonded with my father over that. So, but you're right, Andy, he just churned out one after another, and they weren't immediate successes. We had the Depression going on. We had, in the 30s, and then into the 40s he starts with the Dumbo and the Bambi, and then re-releasing Snow White. So
yeah. And
just continuing
Pinocchio,
on.
Pinocchio.
And
Some of these
yep.
became enormous successes and cultural icons. Bambi. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
around the world probably knows who Bambi is. I mean, I'm driving down
Yeah.
I'm driving down the interstate with my daughter in the car, and there's a deer, so and I'll say, "Oops, we don't want to hit Bambi," and it's like everybody knows the reference, and also
Yeah.
the Disney Studios also contributed to live action films too. I mean, Mary Poppins
Another
was
innovation. Yep.
yeah, it was
Yep. Another innovation
again.
was Treasure Island was the first one, a little bit later. But let me just say, actually, in the 40s, Andy,
Yeah,
for two
sure. Go
things.
ahead. Go ahead.
So during the war, so Disney served towards the end of World War One. During World War Two, he made a lot of animation propaganda in the legitimate sense of propaganda films. One was called Reason versus Emotion,
Oh,
and
really?
it
Really?
yeah, actually I'm going to make sure to put it in the link. It's like an 8-minute video, and it shows how when kids, the evolution of children, that when they start, everything's emotionalism. They just want everything. Give me now. And the adult is like, no, we have to be rational, we have to use our mind, we have to do, like, he gets it right. And actually it's reason and emotion, it's not verses, because they shouldn't be. But then they show Hitler. And he's like pure emotional rage in this, and you see how the public also gets caught up in the emotional rage, and basically the premise at the end is the two are necessary, but as Ayn Rand said herself, there should be a proper relationship between the two. And so I credit Disney for getting that concept and
Yeah.
putting it into an
That,
animated version.
yeah, that's deep. I mean, that
Yeah.
gets us into the field of philosophy. For somebody
Yeah.
who started out making cartoons for children, that's that's a very very a
Yep.
very very important point to understand. So good, good for Disney that he's
Good for
getting down
Disney.
to,
And on that
yeah,
note,
and
staying in the 1940s, 1946, right here, Letters of Ayn Rand. She wrote to Walt Disney. I'll just read it. She
yeah,
says,
go ahead.
"Dear Mr. Disney, September 5th, 1946." She says, "Dear Mr. Disney, I'm sending you an advanced copy of my novelette Anthem, which is being published in America for the first time. I would like you to read it because I think the theme would appeal to you. If you like it, I would ask you to consider making it into a picture. I know that it would be a complete departure from the conventional Hollywood film, and that is why I thought it worthwhile to call to your personal attention. You might see it as I do, because you have never been afraid to venture into new fields and to do the different and the unusual." Last paragraph. If this story can be translated to the screen, I would like to see it done in stylized drawing rather than with living actors. If you like the idea, I
Wow.
don't have to
Wow.
point out to you how important a picture with such a theme would be at the present moment. So this is
Wow.
1946. the war is over. World War II is over, but of course now the looming communist threat is growing, and Anthem speaks to that. Ayn Rand's novel and
Yeah, it's
Anthem
interesting.
certainly.
It's
Mhm.
fascinating. It's fascinating that Ayn Rand wanted to do Anthem, and if anybody out hasn't read Anthem, I would strongly recommend it. It's a very short novelette about a totalitarian future, whether it's fascism, communism, or some hybrid of the two. It's a collectivist totalitarian future where individuals have no rights. They don't even have words to even signify individuals.
Yeah.
Brilliant novelette. And of
Hmm.
course, it's Ayn Rand, so it's about a hero rising up against this kind of tyranny. Fascinating that I didn't realize that she wanted to do one in an animated form, and then if so, too, not surprising that she appealed to Walt Disney. I mean, he's the master, of the genre, and a patriotic individualist American who would see the dangers of communism or fascism or any combination of the two. So that's
And the
fascinating.
first hand,
Did she get a response
not
from
to my
Disney?
knowledge, and not to my knowledge, Andy. Actually, our friend Shoshana might know the answer to that, but
Yeah, yeah, she
also
might.
a first-hander. She's also appealing to his ability to go against the trend, and I could just see, if he wanted this, everyone saying, no, you can't do that. That's like too political, or too, that's against the current trends. And Disney's the kind of guy that always set the new trends, uh, the way innovators do. They don't wait around for what public
Right,
opinion.
and appealing to American values, to patriotic, to patriotic American values, and specifically to the rights of the individual to live his own life and to think for himself, not to be suppressed by a brutal collectivist dictatorship. That's something
Hmm.
that would have appealed to Disney. But anyway,
Yeah,
his life was certainly filled with many other projects. So I could see
yeah,
why he might have passed. He might have passed on this one. I mean, there was so
yeah,
many
and
so many
you're right.
Disney
But
films.
actually, Andy, staying in the political realm, the next year, 1947, he was called to testify in the role of communist in uh, the 1941 animator strike in the studio. Okay, Disney always looked at his workers as a family. Frankly, I think he treated them well. Um, but unions were big in the 30s. It was the Red Decade, so the communist
Mhm.
threat was certainly looming there, and they called for strikes. And Disney never recovered from that. He never considered them family after that happened. You know, some of his subordinates ended up like taking full departments, I think, and going elsewhere. And it really hurt him because he was a family man himself. Had his own family with his wife and children, but he wanted this enterprise to be family oriented. So in 1947, he's called on to testify, which we know Ayn Rand in the
Yeah,
1950s
by
testified in the
HUAC, by
House
the
Un-American
House,
Activities.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Disney was even ahead of her in the sense. I mean, he was certainly more recognized, especially in the film industry. But again, he knows the looming threat. He knows the value of freedom. He's profiting from the freedom, and he's a capitalist without necessarily
Right.
needing to call himself that. So. Kudos to him in that sense as well. And then the following year, 1948, that's the first um, Seal Island and the True Life Adventures. And now the documentary format is another innovation that
Well, hold on a
that he
second. Let's
comes
go
up
back
with.
to let's go back.
Yes.
Let's hold on a second. Let's go back to communists for a second. Couple of points. I
Yeah.
mean, you're right.
Hmm.
You're right about the unions becoming powerful, in that era. But also, the communists had infiltrated a number of the unions. And there was a lot of battles within the unions between, you know, uh, patriotic Americans who wanted to do as well as they could by their workers versus communists who wanted to fight class war. And so that was,
Yes.
that was a struggle, within the unions. And Hollywood, I don't know this. I'm just speculating. Hollywood, I know for sure Hollywood was so penetrated by communists in that era, that it's possible that some of those people might have been working for Disney, who were
Yes,
CPUSA
very
members,
likely. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
and or communist sympathizers. And communism, like National Socialism, is just poison. It's evil. There's no other word
Yep.
for it. It's you need to be disinfected from any contact or dealings with communists. And by the way, I just want to make reference to a relatively recent film made by, of all people, the Coen brothers, who I think are a little touched in the head, but
Great
never.
filmmakers, but a malevolent sense of life, that's for sure. But they're great at their
I was
craft.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I was shocked going back about 10 years when they did a remake of True Grit with Jeff Bridges that I thought was excellent. But Hail
Yeah.
Caesar is the film I'm talking about, where they showed the truth about communist penetration in Hollywood, and with George Clooney as this guy who's big star who's duped by the communists, and he's spouting out all this class warfare, rhetoric, this propaganda, and they showed it. They showed the communist, and then one guy leaves for the Soviet Union on board a Soviet submarine. They showed the truth
Mm.
about communist, the communists in Hollywood, how influential they were. I was very pleasantly, and the movie was funny on top of it. So Hail Caesar was a
They,
was a, was a, was was an
I haven't
enjoyable
seen
film.
it, so thanks for that reference. I will, but they do. You do laugh at their movies. They're masters at their craft. It just happened. I just wish they had a benevolent and more heroic view of life. I mean, oh brother, where art thou? I don't want to go too derailed, but that is just a brilliant, brilliant film. So,
Yeah, yeah,
Hail
yeah. They're,
Caesar,
they're
I'll
talented.
definitely check that out.
Yes, definitely tells the truth about communist penetration in Hollywood. But anyhow,
Hmm.
so that probably did. You're right. Probably did infect Disney's production company as it did so many others. So, but anyway, you were going on to another point.
Yeah, so now he's got the live action, and then we go into the 50s. Cinderella's a big success, Treasure Island, and
Yeah,
um,
Cinderella
he
was
just keeps
huge,
pushing.
but
Yeah, keeps
Cinderella was
pushing the
huge.
boundaries.
That was
Yep.
1950s, right? Yeah, I know
Yes,
that was
that's
a
right.
big success. Again, this is iconic stuff like Bambi, Pinocchio. Everybody knows this film, knows the story. I mean, there's a fairy tale. They might have known the fairy tale, but Disney popularized it even more extensively. It's
Yeah,
charming.
yeah,
It's charming material.
it's charming. And also, what does he do? He always takes the profits from one thing and puts it into the next experiment. So by the time the 50s, 1953, they form Buena Vista Film Distribution Company. So he wants to be part of the distribution, which is where the real profits are if you distribute films. And now, in the back of his mind, from his childhood, he has this idea of a theme park, because he would always feel like, um, when he was a kid, he'd go to a park for a couple of hours. It would be dirty, and it was like more of an in and out experience. And he's thinking, I want to do something where people basically stay there all day, but it's clean, it's enjoyable, it's even clean, like mentally, in the it's physically spotless, but also you step into another world once you go there. So he's considering Burbank Studios, which is where he had his film company, but that was like too small. So then, yeah, he goes a little bit farther down the farther south in California to Anaheim, and there's this orange grove. He buys up the property, and then he starts working on Disneyland as a theme park. And again, all the naysayers, "What are you doing? You're going to bankrupt us!" And um, every detail. He would have the filmmakers um, kind of design the park for the best experience, and even coined the term Imagineers. All right, you know what that means? It's engineers with like imagination. He just had a whole departments of Imagineers to give the best experience for people who went into this park. And then, yes, in July 1955 is when Disneyland opened, and he started. Okay, around this time as well, he went to. There were three broadcasting networks: NBC, CBS. They've all turned him down. he had this idea about the theme park, and he wanted to go on the small screen and be the spokesman himself and show the gradual construction, get the anticipation up. And then after the two of them turned him down, he went to ABC, who liked the idea, and Walt Disney Presents was on again Sunday nights, Andy, and that's what he would do. And right up until the day, they're still painting benches right up before the theme park actually opens up. Like it was always a race against the clock, always
Right.
uh, dealing with naysayers, but giving people the best
Yeah,
experience
what was
possible.
Robert? What was the tagline for Disneyland? The happiest place on earth.
The
Was that
happiest
what they
place on
called it?
earth.
I
That
mean,
was it. Yeah,
again,
yeah,
what a way, what a brilliant advertising stroke. And again,
yeah,
the kids are going to love it, and parents probably had a lot of fun there too. But they certainly brought their
yeah,
kids, and had a good
yeah,
time watching their kids have a great time. And as far as NBC and CBS goes, no, 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 no. Do not bet against Walt Disney.
yeah.
I'm sure ABC
Exactly.
made a pile of money on Disney's TV show. It was on Sunday night for years, as I remember, from
Yeah.
my childhood.
And it's interesting because
So
now Disney owns ABC. If you look about you look at I didn't even mention profit share. I think it was in the 40s to raise money. He actually went public with the enterprise, like $5 a share. So always thinking, again, I credit his brother Roy. We cannot, you know, overestimate the value that Roy put into the Disney name and enterprise, because he was the businessman who
right,
had to pay the bills and had to make payroll for all the staff there. And uh, but yeah, so Disneyland takes off. He's got the ABC program. He's got the Mickey Mouse Club. He's just all over the place promoting this the happiest place on earth. And after Disneyland, 1960s come. Now he starts buying up property in swampland in Central Florida. But the space program is is launching, and he's making films, futuristic films about space, which I think because NASA is um, Cape Canaveral was like 45 miles east of Orlando, and I think that was part of his decision making. Because actually, let me backtrack.
yeah,
1964,
go ahead.
he goes to New York. You remember, Andy? What was the big event in New York in
Oh,
1964?
that was the
The
world. That was the
global
World's Fair. Yeah, that was the
That was
World's
the
Fair.
World's Fair. So he's working with Robert Moses to put the city of tomorrow, and which is where he comes up with this experimental protocol, no, prototype for the community of tomorrow, which is Epcot, and which is
Right.
ends up in Orlando a couple of years later. And it wasn't that futuristic city that he envisioned, but again, and for a short period of time, he actually considered New York. He considered Queens for the second Disney property, but he knew in New York, 6 months out of the year, you can't have people.
Yeah, the
At least four
weather,
months. Yeah, the
yeah,
weather's
the
just
weather
not
during the winter.
conducive
Yeah,
to.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but
So
yeah,
it's not
19.
6 months, but it's
Yeah, yeah, 3 or 4 months definitely going to cut down on your business, unlike in Anaheim or in Orlando.
hmm
Uh, but
hmm
speaking of 1964, if I remember correctly, that's the year Mary Poppins came out, right? So
uh, you are
while
right.
Disney's
You are right.
well while Disney's he's engaged in multiple enterprises, opening theme parks that are the happiest place on earth, putting out these movies like Mary Poppins that are tremendously successful. Now, as a kid, like as a teenager, Mary Poppins didn't really appeal to me. I like John Wayne westerns, and then Clint Eastwood westerns. We got real heroes, killing bad
hmm
guys and
hmm
everything. But still, I could appreciate the artistry as an adult. That the
Yes,
goodwill that's so characteristic of Disney's films and his whole production company and his life's work. Mary Poppins is just filled with that kind of benevolence is the term Ayn Rand you
yes,
used about this kind of good-natured, warm-hearted spirit that shows everybody, especially for kids, but it could be for kids of all ages, as they say. That life is magical.
absolutely.
It can have a
Yeah,
magical element to it, and it could just be wondrous and fun. And the good guys are good, and they do good things.
yep.
And if they're in any conflicts, they win. And it's you can see
Yeah,
why. And it was Julie Andrews, right? Julie Andrews starred in the film
Julie
version of Mary
Andrews.
Poppins,
Yes,
and Julie
that's
Andrews is
right.
very
Yeah,
talented. She's very talented,
yeah,
and yeah, and
yep.
it was an enormous success. I mean, and
Hmm.
and rightfully so. Even though it wasn't my cup of tea when I was a teenager, you know, you know, properly so. That it was good because of that ethos of just life can be good. Disney showed it over and over and over again with
Yeah, and he was
very very
recognized
very
also in,
yeah with great artistry. Go ahead.
yeah, in '64. He was also recognized with the Presidential Medal of Honor, the highest award for a citizen. And by this time, also he's realized his health is starting to fail. So he's realizing the damage of smoking, and he's cutting back. He's not. He goes to Orlando. From he does these cross country trips pretty regularly, but his health is starting to fade. And his last time he's in 1965 was, I think, the last time he went to the maybe 66, that he went to the Orlando location. And then, yeah, December 15th, 1966 is when he died at yeah, age 65. I mean, it's not a long life by
No, no,
by 20th
not by
century
20. Yeah,
standards.
right, right.
But the
Well,
legacy now, the legacy of what does Disney represent, because it has just escalated since his death. He, again, it's similar to, okay, so if we look at 21st century, he was Steve Jobs before Steve Jobs, a guy who just touched and revolutionized so many different industries and was a creative genius, died before his time. But all of these creations spilled over, and to this day, yeah. So there's Disneyland, Disney World in Orlando. There's one in China. There's one in Paris. There's one in Japan. And just walk into any park, everybody's smiling. Okay, and this is why I said this is my what I consider he's the man who brought more happiness than anybody else, because it's visually, it's perceptually observable. Like one reason Carrie and I moved here, because people come to Orlando to be happy. All right, that's like the purpose, and that's why we love living here. In this place, because there's a happiness that emanates whether you're in the theme park or not. And so that's
yeah, yeah. You know,
that's my
you know
tribute
what?
to him there. Mhm.
Absolutely. Disney filled children's lives with sunlight. I mean, that's what I mean.
Yes,
That I think is
yes,
is 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 a great testimony to Disney. Children's lives historically and in many parts of the world to this day in the non-capitalist world have just been brutal. They have to work in the fields doing heavy labor, to be able to have enough to eat. Uh, and all over the world to this day, all over the non-capitalist world, Disney had a very different vision of what a child's life should be like, and that it should be filled with fun and happiness and games and just and the message being that life doesn't have to be dreary and certainly doesn't have to be brutal. Like that, and a lot of children I think resonated with that, and adults too. That this is what I should expect out of life. And
yeah,
I may have to work very hard, but it's not, the work doesn't have to be onerous. It can be doing what I love, and I can fill my life with happiness. And that was the vision that Disney projected so powerfully. That's why we love Walt Disney.
yeah,
And I want
yeah.
to say one thing.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Uh,
No, I was
my
gonna.
favorite,
Yeah, go ahead. You got. Go ahead. Mhm.
my favorite film from the Disney production company was in the 1980s, a lesser known movie called Night Crossing, um, which was
Hmm.
based on a truce. John Hurt was in it, and Bo Bridges, Jeff Bridges' brother, uh, and is based on a true story of these East Germans who in 1979 escaped to the West, but via a hot air balloon flying over the
Mm.
Iron
Hmm.
Curtain, as Churchill
Hmm.
so aptly named it. And
Yes.
they're in East Germany, and we know the Stasi, the East German version of the KGB, was everywhere. They had their tentacles everywhere. They had thousands of agents. I don't remember how many informants they had. They really encouraged family members to inform on on their parents or their brothers or sisters or whatever. And so this is a gripping story of these guys trying to make, first of all, get the materials to make a hot air balloon, which they got to go all over the country to get it from different stores, because if they got it in one store, they're almost certain that the store owner would inform on them to the Stasi. So
Hmm.
there's this gripping story, and I think it's true to real life. The Stasi was onto them at some point, and after them, and they're trying to escape, to the west in a hot, two families with their children, in a hot air balloon. And it's
Wow.
just a gripping story, but it shows the evils of communism and the tremendous, why so many people will risk their lives for freedom. And it's just a great patriotic, pro-West, pro-American, anti-communist film, and not an action. Which Hollywood production company made it? It was Disney. It was a Disney film. Uh,
Yeah.
1980,
Yeah, I have to check that out.
maybe.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
1983,
I mean,
1984. It's right around there. Night Crossing is the name of the movie. And by the
mhm.
way,
So
Peter
it's still Cold
Strelzik.
War era. It's
Yeah, yeah,
still
oh yeah,
Cold War
yeah,
era if you look at it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and Peter Strelzik is the dude's name who inspired in real life the guy who formulated this plan. And we should do a hero show episode on Strelzik, because it's certainly worthy in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of more things. I mean, there are so many films. You're right, especially after his death. One of my favorites. I don't know if you've seen this 1960 film called Pollyanna,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, I
which
remember
is this
it.
girl who is just like so benevolent, and she's an orphan, but she comes to this town and totally revamps the town. There's a Carl Malden is a Brim and Firestone preacher who condemns everyone every Sunday, and she just comes in and just brings joy to all these uptight people. And that was what Disney was accused of, being a Pollyanna. And of course, she knows there's evil in the world, and she knows that she can't fix everything, but she tries. And so during his lifetime, there's like a lot of if we go back with the Steve Jobs analogy, that the things that he created during his lifetime were just magnificent, similar to Disney. What happened after, it's fabulous when they stay true to his own vision. So one film that I think it's only Disney who can turn a Victor Hugo novel into a happy ending. Okay. I don't know if you ever saw The
Right.
Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney movie, right? But it's got a happy ending. It's
Doesn't
like
No,
one of the
I
most
never saw it.
gripping. Oh,
I
it's
never saw
it's
that
so
version of it.
right, but
Yeah,
we
it's a
know that
tragic
we know the
story.
novel. Okay,
Right.
you're gut wrenched. Every Hugo novel, you're gut wrenched at the end, and you
Yes.
never leave happy. And you've gone through this brutal, adventure, but you're like, why don't they smile at the end? Disney finds a way to do that, and I remember going to Disneyland, because I've been to the theme parks, dozens of times before deciding to move here, and they would have like a Broadway version of it, like a 20-minute. They essentialized the story, and basically, Quasimodo and Esmeralda live happily ever after at the end. So,
Oh,
so imagine that it's only
wow.
Disney that can have Hugo flipped on his head as far as
Yeah.
that goes.
Now, if Hugo was alive to see it, I'm not sure he would approve of it. But I could understand. I could understand
Yeah.
Disney's take on it. And you're right. I mean, I love Hugo. He's a magnificent novelist. But like at the end of Les Miserables, I'm just sobbing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
it's so
exactly.
emotionally powerful. Hugo's such a
Yeah,
great writer, but it's sad. The good guys are all dead.
yes,
Jean
yes. Hmm.
Valjean, Angel Ra,
All of his
the
books, the
yeah,
guys die. They
yeah,
they
yeah,
all of them. It's just yeah, it's still
yeah.
worth it, but you
Oh,
still
definitely.
want a little bit more. Like as we said with last time with Tolkien, that you don't want the story to end. But again, if I just look at how Disney finds that way to make
Yeah.
a little bit
No,
of a
I agree
twist,
with
and
you.
I think,
You
mhm,
don't want it to end, but you want it to end more happily. You know that
yeah, Exactly.
Cosette and Marius reach Jean Valjean in time. He starts eating
Yeah,
again, and his spirit is revitalized. And my father is with me, for years to
I
come, and
know.
everything. And yeah, that would.
Yeah,
But that's not Hugo's worldview. But be that
no,
as it may, that's Disney's worldview, which is
yeah,
why we celebrate Hugo for his genius. We celebrate Disney for his benevolence, and
yes, and genius
as
too.
we
Yeah, a different
yeah
kind of
yeah
genius. Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
true, pioneering in so many different fields, as you said. And if we're coming to the end of our episode on Disney, I think we should marvel once again. 59 Academy Award nominations and
Yeah,
22 Oscars from multiple films. Hollywood tends to be, and maybe it was less so back then, Hollywood tends to be a somewhat cynical place. Certainly in our day, maybe less so in Disney's day. But still, for
hmm.
somebody with the worldview of Disney, sparkling and fun and life
Yes.
could be wondrous
Hmm.
and magical, for him to do that well, in the Academy, uh, you know,
Yeah, when it
and
meant
win that
something.
many, win that many
I would
Oscars.
say, Andy. Yeah, I would say, Andy,
It's
when it actually meant something. I don't think the Oscars mean anything anymore. They're just
it,
it's just totally politically correct. But back then, they actually did mean something, and they stood for something, and there was honor in winning. And you're right, he the amount that he won. I'd like to just say a couple of quotes from Disney. I did some research, and let me just rattle a few of them off. I believe in
yeah, go
being an
ahead.
innovator. Okay. Yes, we create happiness. Again, so much about happiness. He says happiness is a state of mind. It's just according to the way you look at things. And first think, second believe, third dream, and finally dare. Again, all themes that
Nice,
he showed over and over again in his the dreamer part of him, again, which children have. They have all these dreams, and he wants to, he just wants to set them up for success by showing that, yeah, success is possible. Just pursue that, and absolutely use your mind. Reason and emotion is, again, I highly recommend you check that up on. It's on YouTube, an 8-minute video. Just type in Disney reason and emotion, and
that's extraordinary.
so many
Right,
really
right,
fundamental things he gets right. The capitalist side, the knowing how to merchandise, how to make profits, how to bring joy and leverage that so that he could do more, so that he could, he wasn't the rich capitalist who sat in a gigantic tub of gold and putting his hands through it. No, he always poured it right back in to the next venture. Always looking to improve, one step ahead of the curve.
right,
So
right. And speaking
just
of
a
being
great
an
man, great
innovator,
visionary. Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of being a visionary and an innovator, it's not an accident that at Epcot Center, in Disney World, very prominently displayed is that quote from the Fountainhead, right? Right? It was
in the middle of
throughout
in the American wing. If you When you open
right.
the door of the American wing, straight ahead throughout the centuries, there were men who took first steps armed with nothing but their own vision. Ayn Rand. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Every time
Yes,
I
perfect.
take pictures
Perfect.
since the 1990s, first times I went down there for that, and yeah, yeah, and um, also influential. Ray Bradbury, the
Mhm.
author, was real good friends with him, and Disney would play off, bounce ideas off him. Art Linkletter, another close friend. So he had, he was always looking. Again, he wasn't the guy that I have the vision and nothing. He looked for support for his vision, and people from different genres who could help him out. And again,
Right.
the to me, some takeaways are that even Ayn Rand saw the respected the man well enough to say, hey, Anthem, this book, okay, that I wrote, I think you would make a good, animated film out of it. And she didn't do that to anybody else, to my knowledge. And
No, no,
so
Disney.
hopefully someday that'll be done.
If she wanted an animated film extolling individualism and
Yeah.
anti-communism, well, Disney was the guy. And in case there are people out there don't know some of these references, well, they will probably all know Ray Bradbury, famous novelist, right? Fahrenheit
Yes.
451. Art Linkletter
Right.
had a TV show, right? He was a TV person. I can remember him, 1960s,
Yeah.
1970s, maybe.
Yep.
Did Linkletter do other things in his life besides? I don't know much about him other than the TV show he had.
Yeah, he was an
Uh,
author. He wrote dozens of books as
oh
well,
yeah,
but he was like a Hollywood
kids say that
insider. Like yeah, he
kids say
knew
the
everyone.
damnedest things. Kids say the damnedest things. Wasn't that one of his books? Quotes from the
Yeah,
children that he had on his show that were just hilarious. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
And I
he was a
remember
Hollywood.
somebody referred to him as Art Lamplighter instead of Linkletter. You know, one of those one of those puns that they used about
Right.
him. But yeah, so you know, Disney. It was a different era when he thrived, but we are still benefiting. You know, generation after generation from all different kinds of. You know, even take out the theme parks, and the man still created happiness on a level that is just it's
Oh yeah,
incalculable. I
yeah.
mean,
What I think of Disney, I don't think first and foremost of the theme parks. I think of the movies. That's
yes,
the
yes,
and the great movies, the animated films, the live action films, always very positive about the potentialities of human life, and how the good could triumph in any conflict, and that life
hmm
is meant
hmm
not to be suffered through and everything but enjoyed. I think that's what, and Disney's TV show, but the
yeah,
theme parks certainly augment that same spirit, and that's why we
yeah,
celebrate Walt Disney on the Hero Show.
yeah. Just one
You
last
want
thing, Andy.
let's
One other
Yeah, go ahead.
innovation in Epcot, the animatronics. Have you ever seen that with Lincoln and
No.
Benjamin Franklin? So they have these lifelike puppets with voices of Lincoln, and it's like the American Hall. So it is in Epcot, and they're up on stage. Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln, and Benjamin Franklin are the three most prominent ones. And again, when you sit there in the in the theater seats, they look like them, they sound like them. You know, it's like you're transformed into this world. So just one additional innovation from Disney that ties
Right.
into Americana, and love for this country for the values that it created.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, about
Hmm.
the movies and the theme parks. If you grew up in Missouri, or a country across the pond, it's a long schlep. It's a journey to get to Anaheim or to Orlando. But
Yeah.
to see a Disney movie, all you got to do is
Yes.
go to your local movie theater and just be enraptured by just the good natured, kind hearted qualities, in those films, or watch them on TV. You don't have to go anywhere but your living room. So Disney's reach, the theme parks are great, happiest place on earth, and gazillions of people do travel from Missouri, from all over the world
Yes.
to go there.
Hmm.
They're great, but the movies are global. I mean, they just anywhere there's a movie theater, which is, I think, probably most places in the world today. You for years and years and years, you could see really good Disney films, and so Disney. That's how I think Disney became global.
Yeah.
This global phenomenon via the movies and the TV show, and the movies on TV. So, but anyhow,
Yeah.
uh, Disney. Any last points you want to make about the great
Well,
man?
okay, so just last thing current, Disney Plus channel. It's worth the 20, $30, however much it is a year, maybe $60. Because now they have Star Wars, they have all the Marvel movies. Like they're this global enterprise where they have everything Disney. So every movie you've mentioned, I'm going to look up those few that you mentioned. So you get all the Disney movies, but now you even have like the Star Wars, and you have the Marvel stuff. So Animal Channel and stuff. So even that is something you can get to this day. At cheap quality entertainment in the comfort of your own home. Like you said, you don't even have to get on a plane and go to one of the theme parks to enjoy that. So it
Absolutely.
continues on. Hmm.
Disney's legacy continues on.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Hmm.
So I think we should salute Walt Disney for the great hero
Yes.
that he is, and Robert and everybody
Thank
out
you.
there Robert and everybody out there in Hero Land. I want to wish you have a heroic day, have a heroic weekend coming up, and let's all try to lead a more heroic life. We'll see you next week, back again on the Hero Show.
Yes. Bye bye now.